the 20 years. So, I know this is the first album you're doing without Carlos. And I
Yeah.
know, you went on tour with him um less than a year after he passed. So like obviously, I know it's maybe not the most fun thing to talk about, but it's very relevant to where you guys are now as a band. Like when, when he passed, were there talks about this being the end of Il Divo? Like, some groups when that does happen, when they face a tragedy like that, they do like, obviously yeah, let's go back, to December 2021 and when, you were processing what was going on, was the future of the group in doubt?
Yeah. So when that happened, uh, I was pretty close to college myself, but and yeah, it was horrifying. It was unbelievable, and we were like, we're done, basically. And the fans were the one who really got us back on track and said, please continue.
Mm.
And knowing Carlos, if that would have happened to one of us, and he would be here still with us, which he is in spirit and mind, of course, he would have continued. He had a phrase always, like he used to love this, singing that song, Show Must Go On. And I always think of Freddie Mercury. Oh, these people, I think, you know, they have such a love for music and a passion. They would definitely continue. So we felt almost like carrying a legacy, that we should continue for our fans and for Carlos's memory. And every time we go back out on stage, he's definitely there with us, And we've done a memorial tour after this. So when we went back on tour, we celebrated Carlos's life, and that was the whole thing. And that was really freaking hard. We were impossible to sing for months, really, and not being in tears, and it brought up a lot of emotions. And now we actually, this transition, having had Stephen Labrie as a guest on the tour, who's an incredible little angel that came into our life, right? Carlos must have sent that to us somehow. And fans loved him. And we were like, so what do? We can't continue being like all sad and go on stage. And we decided to record the 20 years anniversary album, which I think might be confusing because bands like that would certainly, I'm sorry, I'm speaking a lot today.
No, I mean, that's the point of me
Ben would
interviewing you.
probably
Go ahead.
certainly like focus on the last 20 years of what they've done. And we were having this conversation internally. I had a different vision, and they really convinced me that actually I think they were absolutely right, that it's much better to focus on the now and the next 20 years to come. So this tour coming up and the album that we recorded with Steven is really about the present and the future, and not so much looking at our ego and said what we've done, what's been happening. So that's actually really exciting because the past is heavy, a lot of hardness to it. So it's not an avoidance, but more let's stay present. Let's look at what we could be doing differently, and we achieved that with the production side on this record. It's very different than what we've done, I feel, and more risky. And the tour is going to be like that as well.
First, do you have anything to, obviously, I know, it is heavy stuff, but, obviously it was a little bit of I imagine a lot of a shock actually when he passed. It's like we're almost 3 years away from COVID now. Sometimes it's to go back to think of what 2020 and 21 was like, what a
Mhm.
fraught time that was. What were your thoughts about continuing on and how you are honoring the past, but also the looking to the future with this record and Carlos's spirit in the record?
Well, it was a bizarre time, especially that month of December 2021, because after almost 2 years of just not being able to perform,
Yeah.
and all the problems that COVID brought for us with it, not just confinement and stuff, but also financially, for example, I have no income during 2 years. And then you finally the world starts opening up again. We go on tour again. And we literally just do a handful of shows, and then Carlos gets sick and goes into hospital. And we all get sick, you know, because we all contracted COVID, probably through him.
You were on tour at the time when this happened?
Yeah. We had a show. The last show we performed with him was in Bath in England. And we were driving after that show by cars to Manchester, England. And next morning, early in the morning, is when he got taken to hospital.
Oh, wow.
And we all got sick. We all got confined in our Manchester hotel room. And at that time already, after a few days of Carlos in the hospital, you know, most people have no idea how that really went down. The doctors just advised us that this man is really sick. Nobody thought of death at that point. Everybody thought he's gonna be in a hospital for a couple of weeks and then he's gonna recover. But the doctors advised us it's gonna be probably 6 months until that man can stand on his own feet again. Probably a year and a half until he can sing again. And management at that time already was like, gentlemen, we have got a full calendar next year. What do you want to do? Do you want to just do it with the three of you? Do you want to find somebody to jump in, and a baritone who can sing Carlos's parts for that period of time? And David knew of Stephen. He had worked with him before. We were looking around, looking for other baritones who could possibly do the job while Carlos was recovering. That was the whole mindset of management and everybody around us. And then 10 days later, Carlos passed.
So sorry.
And to me, that was the end. I was convinced that is the end. And it might sound overdramatic, but I really felt it like that. Not only this is the end of Il Divo, this is the end of my life, how I've known it for the last 18 years. That's how it felt for me. And yeah, gosh, getting a bit emotional.
I'm so yeah. You're
Sorry.
not sounding
No,
overdramatic.
no.
I would have felt the same way. I'm sure.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. You know, and then what surprised me actually is because, as I just said, I was convinced this is it. This is it. It's over. And I don't know. Sebastian probably thought the same. David probably thought the same. Nobody else seemed to think the same. Everybody else around was just like, okay, so January rehearsals with the new guy. You know, we got the tour planned. The promoters are waiting for. We need to give him an answer. Is this going ahead? What's going to happen? We've got contracts, you know, we've got contracts to fulfill from before COVID. What's going to happen? Promoters, agents, management. To everybody else, it was crystal clear that Il Divo would just go on.
Wow.
And so we kind of did. Because I guess we were also happy that we were not just falling into a complete void, but we had something to occupy our brains with. You know, even if it was what Sebastian said, it was horrible, especially the first shows, the first weeks, months of touring, in tears every night, you know, and stuff. It was emotionally very, very hard. But I was also surprised how all the fans reacted wonderfully. You know, really, people just... There were people who said, you know, I'm not going to see Il Divo anymore. I love Carlos. Carlos is gone. I'm not going to see Il Divo anymore. Totally understand that. Totally respect that. There were people who came to the concert and said, this is the last time I've seen Il Divo. We've all honored Carlos's life and work together, and I'm not going to see them again. But most of the people were like, gentlemen, thank you so much for keeping making the music that makes us so happy. that gives us so much, that pulls us through our difficult times, and now sharing your difficult time with us. And it was the whole 2022, and then having, like Sebastian said, Stephen as a rather big angel actually, with us, because Stephen is he's always got a smile on his face. He just does the job. He doesn't complain about anything. He's just always there and plows ahead. And he was wonderful to have him with us. And yeah, it's just incredible to me that when I really thought everything is black, everything is over, everything around me, like the whole world just pulled me further and through, and to a point where we are now. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I mean, David thinks himself very spiritual. He's very concerned when Mercury's in retrograde and stuff like that, which concerns me a little bit less. But still, when he says in something like that, he sometimes feels that Il Divo is just meant to be. It is thoughts like that, reflections like that, where I kind of, like to believe him, or like to agree with him that there is something like, why are we still here after 20 years?
And also there's probably some people that thought, given the way you guys came together through Simon Cowell, through not knowing each other before, through auditioning for something, a lot of times those kind of things aren't very long lived. Even,
Exactly.
some of the success stories like One Direction or Fifth Harmony, they're not, they didn't last 20 years, a lot of boy bands or girl bands that are kind of put together and didn't form by, a more, I guess, for lack of a better word, more organic way. They don't last. So especially if tragedy like this would happen, what do you think is the secret that you lasted 18 years in your original lineup, and then after a tragedy still had the bond and the fortitude to continue on? Like, what is the secret besides the retro, what is it? Mercury in retrograde. It's gotta be more than that. It's gotta be more than
It's gotta be more than that, right?
Yeah.
I don't think any of us would have thought it would last. But the reason I think it lasts, obviously, there's a few factors. The one is it starts with the fact that we are very passionate about music. We're passionate about Il Divo. We care about Il Divo more than we care for ourselves, in that it's a power greater than ourselves. So we want to create this powerful music, and we have the best fans in the world because they're showing up since 20 years. And even though we could be passionate, if they don't support us, they don't come to see us on stage, regardless of being record today, which is sadly just not much of a it's a tool in order to go out there and perform.
Yeah, a lot has changed since the days where someone could sell 5 million copies of a debut record, unfortunately.
I was watching this documentary with that, and I'm like thinking, wow, this was a golden age back then. But yeah, it's we're with our passion, we're managing to attracting people, and people show up, and we see a lot of these people, a lot of our fans since 20 years, and it's like a growing family. You get older with them, and you see their grandkids, so it's super interesting to see. But my favorite part, and that's a kind of a joke I want to make on stage, is how you meet somebody who says, I loved your music since day one. I was 12 years old. And I'm thinking, holy moly. I am that old now. So it's interesting to hear comments like that, but super grateful.